Hey YouTube. So if you've seen any of my other videos, you know 3-4 years ago I bought a CampInn Teardrop trailer, this guy right here, and we absolutely love this trailer. We use it all the time, but like any recreational product, it's going to need maintenance from time to time. And so we ran into our first minor issue where the battery trickle charger went out. So I thought I'd go ahead and document the replacement process, swap that out, and show you guys how to do this. Okay, let's take a look at this Tinder battery charger. I ordered this directly from CampInn, and this is the replacement for the current trickle charger that's on the trailer. The model that they had used as part of the original manufacturing was from Battery Tinder, and they have since switched that out to Marinco. And this is a trickle charger, so this is the kind of thing that you'd use on boats and golf carts and things like that. So it's perfectly suited for the trailer where it may be sitting for long periods of time without use and you want to keep that battery charged. That's exactly what this thing is meant to do as a trickle charger. Now, this is a ruggedized model charger, so it's in extremely durable housing. It's meant to be used in situations where it's going to be exposed to a lot of elements, so they fill it up with epoxy. They use a really durable housing and things like that, so to help protect the electronics. So let's take a look at what's inside. And looks like we've got our instructions from CampInn on how to replace it. Then we've got some wire connectors and some screws. We've got the battery charger itself. So as you can see, it's very ruggedized. A couple of indicator lights. Completely sealed packaging so that it's protected from elements and weather. Got a couple of terminals and a wire that you need to install it. Got some zip ties, some additional wiring and plugs, and then the Marinco instructions. So that's what comes in the box. Let's start the process of swapping the trickle chargers out. Okay, so here's the original battery Tinder, the maintenance trickle charger, and I don't have it plugged in right now, but there's normally some lights right here that come on when the battery Tinder is working the way it's supposed to be working, and that was one of the indicators that this thing failed. There were several other things that I had to go through a little checklist to isolate it down to the battery Tinder, but you know, that's the process. So we're gonna start swapping that sucker out here and get this thing back up and running. So one of the first steps in swapping out the trickle charger is to disconnect the battery. So we need to get into the battery compartment and get that disconnected. In my case, I already know my battery is toast, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the whole battery out and get a replacement. So we're going to start that next. So this is what you'll find when you get the battery disconnected and pulled out of the way. You got your fuse panel and everything there. So now we're ready to go underneath and start clipping wires and pulling the old battery trickle charger out. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not. I don't have a tripod that's going to allow me to get in there, but I'm going to go ahead and drop this whole Tinder down so I can get to all the wires and start clipping some things and get it ready to put the new one in. Okay, so I have the screws removed, and you want to make note of the orientation of the label and stuff so that when you install the new one it goes in the same way. But now I can just pull this down. And I can start clipping wires, and I want to clip the wires as close to the old battery Tinder as possible, so that way I've got the most amount of wires to work with in case I have to trim the wires again and I don't get good connection. So So let's start clipping the wires back. Okay, so the first thing I did was to get this out was I clipped away all the little wire ties, zip ties, so I could get in there and see what I was doing. That may or may not be required because I just wanted to make sure I wasn't damaging any of the wires and I could get to everything cleanly. So I clipped away just the zip ties and didn't undo any connections or anything like that. And then I snipped right here coming into the battery tender, so that way the battery tender's hanging down now. And now I'm going to clip this one right here, and then I'll start working my way back further into and see what wire connections I need to make in its place. Okay, so the next thing I did was zip tied this wire bundle up that's running to all the different sensors and all that kind of stuff to get that out of the way. Then here are the two, right here's one and then here's the other. This is the AC side and this is the DC side. And so I stripped away, you see there's two levels of insulation, right? So there's one bundle insulation that goes around all three wires, and then each wire is individually insulated. So first step is to trim back the main insulation without cutting through these wires here, and then trim off so you can get to the wire itself, and just twist them up and do the same thing on this side. And again, you'll see there are colored coded wires, so you want to make sure you connect these things up right, and strip away the main insulation, split the wires so you can get to them, and then strip away the individual wire insulation. Again, making sure you got the color coding just right. Okay, here is the unit removed, the defective unit anyway. And you can see I trimmed off right at the housing where it goes into the tender on both sides. This is the AC side. You can see the green and white and black cables there, and then here you can see the red and black for the DC side. So, and where those came are on the trailer, I tipped it off and trimmed those up and got those ready for install. So that's the old unit removed. Let's finish getting this thing swapped out. Okay, so now that I've got the trailer side prepped and ready to take the trickle charger, now I need to prep the trickle charger. And so one of the things CampInn did was they provided basically a cut-off end of an extension cord, and they've already prepped the wires, so they've already stripped off the insulation and got to the bare wires. They also provided the connectors, wire connectors, and what you'll see if you've never seen a wire connector before, there's a metal sleeve inside here, and both wires go in, and then you crimp it down to grab hold of the wires. And then this part is essentially a heat shrink tubing. And if you saw my installation on the Pro Armor 4-point harness, you saw one of the parts I used some heat shrink tubing to create a loop back switch. This is kind of the same stuff. So these just go on here like this. And then we're going to crimp it down with a pair of pliers. So it should be nice and snug. And then we use a match. To shrink the tubing. Pretty much like that. It should be good and shrunk. Just like that. And so now that's a good sealed connection. I'm going to do that to the rest of the wires, and that'll prep this piece, and this will end up plugging into the charger. And then I've got to prep the DC side. This is the AC side, obviously. So now I need to prep the DC side as well. Okay, so now we're underneath the trailer. Here's my AC side, my green, white, and black. Here's my connector that I've already prepped. And so now it's just a matter of getting these all color matched up. So we'll start with the white. Getting those out of the way. Twist it tip. And did I get it far enough back? Looks like I might need to trim off a little bit more insulation, so I'm going to do that right now, and then we'll come right back to this. Okay, so you can see I trimmed off more room here to give myself a little bit more room to get down into the connector. I've also cleaned up the edges a little bit more, give myself a little bit more insulation room here as well, so I can get a good, secure connection. Just like that. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to crimp them, and then we're going to heat shrink them, and we should be good to go on the connector side. Okay, so now with a good solid connection, you want to make sure you want to test them. You want to tug on them a little bit and make sure you got a good solid connection there, because if you don't, you're going to get you know, bad performance, bad charging, or it may not work at all. So you're going to want to do all that, make sure everything's good and solid on both sides. And then the next step I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap this in electrical tape just to kind of give it a little bit extra layer of protection against the elements. And so let me wrap that up right now. Okay, so here it is all wrapped up in electrical tape. I couldn't find my black electrical tape. I got a bunch of different colors of this stuff, so I just grabbed the green. Doesn't really matter what color you use, but you know, that gives a good protection against weather and water from being thrown up underneath the vehicle on rainy days and things like that. So with the AC side done, I'm going to start working on the DC side now, which is these guys right here. Now this is what was trimmed off the old battery tender. You can see there's a red and black wire that go into the battery compartment, and so I'm going to clean these up and get connectors on them. Now one thing to note is, just like on the new battery charger from Marenco, there's an inline fuse on this terminal, or on this line. So, but right now it's up on the top of the gray water tank, and so I can't really get to it. Ideally, what I'd like to do is make that more accessible, so that way in case that ever pops, that you've got an easy way to change it. But that's going to be a fairly big job to do, because this thing is in there really, really solid. I tried going up from the top side and pushing some of the excess wire through and then kind of gently pulling on this, but it's in there really, really good. So the only way to really get to it now is to drop the tank. I could try loosening up the tank, drop these, loosen up these studs and drop the tank down a little bit, but some of these studs are a little rusted, you can see here, and so I'm a little worried about breaking one of them off and creating a bigger problem. So I'm not going to go to that extent today. I'm going to just try and wire this thing up and see if that'll give me what I need to get this thing back up and running. If it turns out that I've got to drop the tank to do the rest of the job, then I'll go ahead and do that, but I'll probably wait till better weather and stuff to do it. So let's get these things cleaned up and wired in. Okay, you can see I've got the new battery charger here. This is the inline fuse that I was talking about. There's one like this on the wires that are already in the trailer that I can't get to, that I talked about. I'm going to go ahead and leave this wire, or this inline fuse, in, so that way at least I've got now two fuses in between me and the battery, so that way if one does pop, at least I've got a 50-50 shot at it being the accessible one. So what I'm going to do is just trim off these terminal leads. Just like that. I'm going to strip it back. Give myself a little bit of room. Okay, just like before, you want to color match your wires, and you want to make sure you got a good solid connection on both sides. So that way you get good performance out of your charger, and your battery always stays charged. So we're going to heat shrink these ends next, and then we're going to mount up the charger and see how it does. Okay, so I got this all wired up down here, but I left it out because I wanted to test it beforehand before I mount everything up onto the floor of the trailer.
but the battery was also dead. And I don't know if it was the battery tender took out the battery or the battery took out the battery tender when it died. So, but in either case, I had to replace them both. And the battery just got here this evening. I bought it off of Amazon. And so I'm going to go ahead and put that in right now and then do some quick testing, make sure everything's working fine. And then I'll go ahead and if everything's working, then I'll go ahead and mount that up on the trailer. So, okay, I've got the battery in and connected up. And you can see I've got both lights working. I've got the charging light as well as the ready light. So everything's working as intended. If I unplug the shore power, you can see I lose the charging light, so now I'm just running on battery. And then the ready light also goes out because it's not getting any power. So it's doing exactly as it should, and I've still got power up here on my light. So looks like everything's ready to be mounted up, so let me go ahead and mount it up to the floor and zip tie all the wires, and then we'll be done. With everything tested, I went ahead and sealed up this as well with some electrical tape, this connection, so that way hopefully protects any water from getting in there and road debris. And now I'm just going to go ahead and mount it up here into this spot where the old tender was. Okay, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but I've got it positioned about where I want it. So now I'm just screwing it into the floorboard. Now that I have the charger mounted where I'd like, the next step then is to just zip tie up all these cables. That's really the last step. Now the challenge here is there's really no place up here to tie off to. There's no anchor points. So to solve that problem, what I've done is I just picked up some eyelets with a nice wood screw end on them. And I'm going to sink these into the floor, and then I'll feed the zip tie through that, and that'll be my anchor point to tie off all these wires. So that'll be the final step, and then we'll pretty much be done with this job. Here's a quick tip for you. It's a little tough to get in here and sink that screw in, but if you've got a little screwdriver like this with a bend in it, you can feed that through there, and that'll make it a little bit easier to tighten that thing down. Oh, and another tip for you, to start it, I put the eyelet in the tip of this and use this to just enough to get it started, and then use the screwdriver to finish it. And there is everything zip tied out of the way. You can see that, get under here a little better, you can see that I've got my anchor points. I've got the weight of all the cables actually distributed across multiple anchor points, so that way if one pulls out for whatever reason due to road vibration or anything, that it's still secured and cables won't drag down and drag on the ground and leave me stranded without power. I've got clean access to the charger. I can see the lights and everything, that everything's working. And you know, if I need to get to the fuse, I can actually do that fairly easy. Just clip the wires or clip the zip ties, and I can get access to the fuse. So I've got everything pretty much done. Okay, so that's pretty much all there is to it. It's a pretty straightforward. Replacing your battery charger, battery tender on your CampInn trailer is it's a pretty easy process. It really doesn't take that long. It did take me a little bit longer to get it done than I had anticipated. That's because I was replacing the battery that I in the trailer as well, and I purchased the battery online, so I had to wait a few days for that to arrive. But you know, if it wasn't for that, the whole job would have taken me, you know, an hour or two maybe. It's really not complicated at all. The one hiccup was not being able to get the fuse from the top of the tank down. But you know, that would have been a bigger job if I would have had to drop the tank. But so I'm just wiring it in line with the other one, so we'll see how that goes, but I'm not anticipating any problems from that. If you've got, a different trailer, a different battery tender, it should be a very similar process. So this should work as a guide for that as well. If you've got any questions, feel free to post your questions below. I'll be happy to address those as I can. And if you enjoyed this video, stick around, check out my other videos, and subscribe. It helps build my channel, and it helps me bring more content to you guys, and whether it be how-to videos or just kind of a general adventure videos. So thanks for watching, and have a great day.